here's a look at your back-to-back champs, the last 5 teams to do it. Not something we've seen very much in the last 20-plus years, Eej and Dano. Pittsburgh and Detroit, the only teams to do it in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I mean, it had been a long time between Detroit and Pittsburgh. And then I thought it might be a while before we see it again, but full marks to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And not only did they do it back-to-back years, they did it in, I think it's the quickest period of time.
Like 10 months or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. So full marks to the Lightning.
Impressive to see the Penguins there twice.
Yeah.
Back in
the 90s.
My time and my era with the great Merrill Lemieux.
Yep. Yager.
Obviously in the 90s. But Tampa Bay, such a complete team. As good a team as I've seen in quite some time, from the standpoint that they can win games any way you want to play the game. If it's physical, they can do that now. If it's certainly a rush game and run and gun type of game, they're going to beat you usually there. But defensively, they are as good in their own zone as any team. They added all those grit players they needed. So I give Julien Brisebois and his staff, the general manager of Lightning, and John Cooper, a ton of credit from the standpoint. They recognized what they needed. Last trade deadline. Added the pieces, and a remarkable team, top to bottom. And, yes, the best goaltender in the world. That doesn't hurt.
And, of course, they got a pretty good owner there in Jeffrey Vinik. He's come into Tampa, bought that team a little more than 10 years ago, and completely turned that franchise into one of the best sports franchises in North America.
When you look at this team, both of you, because you guys have seen a lot of really complete, good dynasty type, I guess it's like a modern-day dynasty type team, where does this Tampa Bay Lightning team stack up? Like, what teams of the past are they as dominant as?
Well, I would only say this, is I think they could compete with any of the great teams. Now, whether they could beat, you know, an Oilers team that won 4 out of 5 years, the Islanders that won 4 in a row, the Canadiens that won 4 in a row, the Devils teams that won 3 Stanley Cups in a period of 8 or 9 years.
What about the Hawks that won
Chicago Blackhawks?
I mean, now they did play each other, right, in 2015, but that was an earlier version of the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they didn't have all the pieces that they eventually would bring to the table, and they had to have that learning process. The Islanders had to lose to the Canadiens. The Oilers had to lose to the Islanders. You guys had to lose to the Rangers in 1994 in just a bitter 7-game war, double overtime. It evolves over time, but I think this Lightning team, and you were in those battles, Dano, I just think they could compete. I don't know if they'd win, but they could compete with just about anybody we've seen in the past.
I agree. I'd stack them up against any team. I mean, they are that deep, that efficient in all 3 zones and throughout their lineup. And just kind of what I mentioned, when you can win a game anyway, a lot of times you have an identity and you have to play to it. The New York Islanders have an identity, and they took Tampa Bay to a 7-game series and only lost Game 7, 1-0. But they can win one-way kind of thing as far as shut it down, opportunistic. But Tampa Bay can win any way that I had mentioned earlier. And that, to me, makes you as good a team as I've seen in a long time. Now, let's not forget, in the 70s, the Canadiens, the Oilers in the 80s, the New York Islanders, who I love that team. That is a dynasty, as good as it gets. But you were able to keep teams together much easier.
No salary
It's going to be a lot tougher for Tampa to three-peat, as we like to say, because the team's not going to look the same next year.